Yeah, the time is going up.
Excellent. Right, we are in. Hello, welcome, guys. Welcome to an episode of Take 97, a film podcast with me, your host, David Ingram. It's been a while, but this episode will be an intro to a new batch of episodes that we will be bringing to you, hopefully in a more regular fashion than of recent times due to many factors. But we hope to bring you lots more interesting film stuff as the months go on and as the weeks go on as well, with more and more new film releases. Specifically, though, today we will be talking about not just any film. You know, you've heard about all your big Marvel films, all the big names from the Oscars and everything, the Golden Globes, everything that you could possibly imagine from big name cinema. But I would like to focus on the future of cinema, and particularly independent film, and hopefully what I would like to see as a big name in film someday. And a close friend of mine, as of recent times, we have discovered a shared passion for film, as many of us who come on this podcast do. I have basically invited this guest along who's been on the podcast once before, for those of you avid Take 97 listeners and viewers, for those of you who are watching this video version. I've invited him on again because he has got this writer, director, filmmaker. He has got a fantastic project which we are going to discuss today. He is the mastermind behind the short film Riverboat, which we did review and we did a previous interview on before and discussed at great length, to be fair, and also just independent film in general. And really, as soon as he approached me and said, "David, can we do an episode based around my new feature film that I am in the midst of planning and I want to promote the hell out of," I said, why not? I'm always up for it. So without further ado, with lots of grand gesturing and introductions of merriment, I will finally get onto it. His name is Jack Burney. Please welcome Jack Burney to Take 97, a film podcast once again. How are you doing, Jack?
Thank you, David. It's good to be back. Yeah, it's been a little while. Yeah, the last time I was here, it was for Riverboat. For a short film, what feels like decades and decades ago, but it was
really
a few short years ago. So it's good to be back.
It really does. And to put it into context as well, the fact that when you came on, I think it was post-pandemic, but also sort of mid-pandemic. Like there was still obviously restrictions going on, and filmmaking was a bit, especially independent filmmaking, was a big challenge trying to get all the safety procedures in, getting people to the right place at the right time. Riverboat, to be honest, if no one's seen any bits of Riverboat or hasn't heard of Riverboat, please do go. And I think it is. Is it widely available these days, Jack? Is it? Have you put it out there widely available somewhere?
Yeah, it is. It's mainly on YouTube at the moment. Just because, we ran into that thing of it was doing very well at the film festivals, but people wanted to see it. We put it out on YouTube. So if people listening just type in the Movie Picture Box, that's my company, into YouTube, it'll come up, and you'll be able to watch it on there.
Excellent. No, that's brilliant. Yeah, because like I say, if people haven't seen Riverboat, it's genuinely one of the best, like really tense short films that I'd seen for a long while, to be fair, up until that point, because short films have a very tricky sort of MO, really. They have to convey the grand epicness of what we get from a feature film, which we'll move on to in a minute, and convey it in such a short space of time. Like I genuinely feel like it's a very tense it's in the box atmosphere, really, because you are literally restricted to this one set. Only about, was it three, four actors, I believe, if I remember correctly.
Just three actors.
Yeah. And the fact is, you're doing such a big, tense job with such a small set, small scale crew and cast and everything. It really does make you think, if you can do that, you surely should be able to move on to like feature work and stuff. And obviously, I feel like, speaking to you outside of podcasting and filmmaking and stuff, you definitely have that grand filmmaking vision for yourself and any of your projects, which I will now segue nicely into the what we are currently here to discuss. And the reason why you've come on this podcast is the fact that you have got a feature film lined up. It's not been made yet. It's as of the recording of this podcast, it is definitely still a work in progress, because you've still got a bit of funding to do as it stands and a lot of prep on certain parts of the production. But to be honest, Jack, I'll just let you take it away and tell us a little bit more about your feature film that is coming up called Black Barrels. So would you like to just tell us what Black
Yes.
Barrels is about?
So I guess it's probably worth starting with a little bit of my inspirations for it. So I live in Essex, and I live in the Southend-on-Sea area. If any of your listeners know, obviously that's right on the coast, and it's a very old part of the country. There's still places with the cobbled streets and the buildings that have been there for hundreds and hundreds of years. And at the time, this was it was just after lockdown. I started to work in a pub, and over the course of those months, I gradually heard these rumours about the pub being potentially haunted, and just almost every member of staff had a story to tell about it. And this just got my mind like, oh my god, this is so cool. It's so creepy to be in a place that you've heard the stories about. So it all sort of started to come out of there. And at the time, I was writing another feature film, but I just, on my days off from writing that, I started to write this horror feature film, and it snowballed and snowballed, and it eventually is now is what it is. The script is quote unquote done. I know a script is never done, but to give the listeners actually an idea about what it's about, it's all about our central protagonist Theo, who has to move to this remote coastal town for a reason that will be explored throughout the film, and he gets a job working at a pub, and similar to sort of my experiences, he discovers that the pub is haunted. Now, his journey goes in a very, very different direction than what mine did, but it's all about this idea of a haunted pub, and we bring in elements of witchcraft, which is very big in the Essex area. Anyone who's familiar with Essex, or maybe grew up in Essex, or are just fans of the witch mythology, will know that Essex has a big history with witches. In Essex, there were, X times the amount of witch trials and executions and stuff compared to everywhere else in the world. It was such a concentrated area for witches. So it just seemed like these two things, these two ideas, these two fragments just clicked together so nicely. And that's where we're at the moment with it.
Oh, that's brilliant. No, honestly, I get such, when people tell me, like, they break down story ideas, or they tell me about a film that they've seen, and it's about it's a horror film essentially, and they tell me about these spooky goings on and stuff, and it's very hard, I feel, especially nowadays as well, because you get the likes of these films that are very, I don't know how to put it really. They're just sort of, they give themselves over to the gore and everything like that. And gore is very much a big integral part of many horror films, and very big spooky theatrical releases that we've seen over the years. But I always like to sort of hark back to the days of the early 30s and silent films, and also the early sound films. So for instance, the likes of Dracula, all the Universal monster movies and stuff like that, Nosferatu as well, all those early classic, really spooky, chilling films. And you think to yourself, if they can convey that much, I know now arguably some of the effects are a bit dated because of the time that they were made in, but I do feel that the one thing they always used to get right was the atmosphere and the tone in a lot of respects. So I do think that, it's a challenge to make a horror film nowadays that's genuinely scary and genuinely has that thrill factor that we all know and love, and that most of us who are a bit freaky inside, we do love a little bit of horror. It's not just takes the whole voyeuristic element of cinema to the next level, really, because there's watching a true to life documentary or a true to life biopic kind of thing where you're watching the lives of others, but truly there's nothing more voyeuristic than a horror film where you literally are watching people die or suffer for no reason whatsoever, other than the fact that, I don't know, just an evil dream master or a creepy ghost has come back to avenge their long lost great granddad or something, or just
Yeah.
themselves in general. But my main point that I'm trying to make, though, here is that your little description there of even though it's a work in progress kind of thing on a couple of fronts, it's got that sense of mystery. It's got that sense of the thrill in the expectation for what is to come. In some of the material that Jack has actually released, which we will put out some images on our social media as well. Jack shares plenty on his as well. There is definitely an element, and I would like to maybe ask you about that really. How far would you say you've been inspired by, and whether it's just me or not, or whether viewers might actually think this as well, were you inspired by Robert Eggers by any chance, from the likes of The Lighthouse? And
Yeah.
also as of the recording of this, I think later this year in 2024, there will be a fresh release of the original, as I've already mentioned briefly as well, the classic Nosferatu as well, the original vampire story from German expressionist cinema days gone by. So would you say you were inspired by those kind of things, or was there any other factors that came into, as well as obviously the local Essex area, as you said, which inspired that, very creepy witchcraft based storyline that you've just depicted to us in your little speech there for us? What other
Yeah.
inspirations would you say you've had?
I think, The Lighthouse is it's in the top tier of the inspirations for this film, because I think one of the things that I found that The Lighthouse did, which I really enjoyed, was it made like nautical stories scary. So
Yeah,
often when we talk about like fishermen's folklore, it kind of only goes into pirates territory.
yeah,
Mermaids and the Kraken and all that sort of stuff. It has now become sort of synonymous with pirates. Whereas what I liked with what Eggers did with The Lighthouse is he not only brought it into a bit more of the modern era, but he made it just overtly scary. And obviously he brought it into that psychological element, and he made it very human in that sense.
yeah,
So yeah, there was actually a short film that I wrote, which was sort of the precursor to this. We were applying for some funding, and unfortunately the funding didn't go through. But it was all about fishermen's folklore, and that was it was. I don't want to say it was a rip off of The Lighthouse, because I'm not going to hold myself to that standard. But it was it was black and white. It was very artistic and stuff, and yeah, it was all about people who live on the water and that sort of thing. The textures of the
yeah.
barnacles and the rope and all that sort of stuff.
Absolutely, yeah.
But
Oh
I think
well,
what you said earlier, that's sort of an interesting thing. And as I'm writing this horror, obviously, I think you sort of have to become a micro expert in horror. I mean, I don't class myself as an expert in horror, but it is interesting, as you pointed out, how nowadays horror films are a lot more about visually showing the gore or the scares or anything like that. Whereas in the early days of cinema, it was all implied, and I think that does speak to how people have become a bit more curious and stuff. They don't just want to imagine these things; they want to see it.
yeah,
And the quote that kept running around my head was from David Fincher, who's one of my favorite directors, and he just said very simply that people are perverts. And
yes.
I think that
In short, they basically are.
and horror allows us to see those maybe fantasies is the wrong word, dark fantasies, come to
Yeah,
life, and see what would happen when a person gets mangled or gets attacked by someone. What does that look like? Well, a horror film allows our mind and our eye to see what that would look like. And I think that's why people love it. They like to explore the darkness.
yeah.
And it's
No, exactly. I do agree very much, and it's like I teach a group of kids on the weekend at a performing arts academy, and we teach them about, like, we make short films with them, and you'd be surprised. Well, not even surprised, based on what you just said there. The amount of times you say, "What kind of film do you want to make?" Anything, any genre. What would you like to make? What sort of story do you want to tell? 99% of the time, genuinely, or maybe 90, because we'll be fair to the 10% that want to do something happy and fluffy. it's usually, and very, very, like, the outstanding vote usually goes to the horror genre or
Mm,
something spooky or
mm,
like supernatural, because I think it's that case of the
mm,
unknown, and like, even if you know, like, whispers, like the whispers and the rumors, and it linking back to the whole point of Black Barrels
mm,
is the fact that it's about myths, legends. It's about, like, things that people have told people over the years. It's been passed down
mm,
from generations, but no one really has that concrete proof that it exists, other than the word of mouth, sort of, like,
mm,
the legend that's been passed down from generation to generation. And that is the interesting thing. It's like when people look back at, like, your own personal history and your own life and stuff, it's very much, oh, do you know about Uncle so and so or Auntie so and so, or, your great grandma or something? And, years gone back, we probably, unless we really went into detail, we wouldn't know anything about our own, like,
mm,
genealogy and stuff like that, unless we really looked into it. And
mm,
if you only have a limited amount of knowledge about something, you're going to naturally come up with all sorts of, like,
mm,
fantastical or even somewhat mundane things, but your own version of events. And that is basically what horror films are stemmed from, that
mm,
belief in the fantasy, the strange, the absurd, the adventure of something that we don't quite understand, but we think
mm,
we've got some kind of understanding behind it.
mm,
But yeah, that's that. It's a truly wonderful genre to work in. So you've told us a little bit about what the film Black Barrels is about. Could you currently? So you've told us a little sort of brief overview of where you're at in terms of, like, sort of developing certain parts of it. Could you tell us a little bit more, because you have actually got an ongoing campaign as of the
mm,
recording of this episode and as of the release of this episode, in trying to raise funds for this film.
mm,
It's a very ambitious goal, like any filmmaker, be it in Hollywood or independent at all.
mm.
But could you just tell us a little bit more about, like, where you're at and what you're sort of what you've got so far? Obviously, there's promotional material online that people are free to access online just to look at your campaign.
Mhm.
So it's got interviews with yourself, a couple of, I think it's your producer as well, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly from when I viewed it the other night. Could you just tell us a little bit more about, like, what you've secured and anything else that you're looking to kind of get into in the process of your crowdfunding for this project?
Yeah, so this obviously goes into a little bit of the producing side of it, which is fun. I think people, I imagine there's a lot of your listeners who are either filmmakers themselves or they're just interested in the process. And when you're producing an independent film, it's independent, which means that it hasn't got a big studio attached. So normally
Yeah.
in a film you would get someone like Disney or Warner Brothers or someone like that, and they would give over the $100 million that it needs to make the film. And that's why their logo gets to go on the front. But when you're making an independent film, obviously you haven't got the backing of a big studio. So that's why when you look at the indie films, if any of your viewers have watched like films from Cannes or just independent films in general, you'll notice that there are usually quite a lot of logos at the front, because lots of people are putting in smaller amounts. With a big film, Disney will put in 100%. With the small
Yeah.
films, one company might put in 20% and 20% and so on. So we've sort of taken that mindset of having lots of different avenues to fund this film, because we're looking to raise £100,000, which it's not a small
Yeah.
amount of money, but even for a feature film, it is very, very achievable. And yeah, the crowdfunding is one of those elements, because yeah, we realize that the horror community is so strong, and there are lots of people who want to get involved in horror films, and who maybe who would never work on a normal film, whatever that means.
Yeah.
Um, but
Who
might
makes a
go,
normal film these days?
I know, I'd say who knows. But they might, want to get interested in a horror film, and especially something that's, I would say, a traditional horror film. It's not a psychological horror. It's not all in the head. It's got real scares. So the crowdfunding, which is available on our Greenlit page, again, we can put it up on the screen.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you type in, like, it's like Greenlit /projects/Black Barrels, it'll come up. And we're just looking to raise basically the hair and makeup and special effects budget. So obviously the main villain of this film, I guess if you could call it that, is this spirit of a witch. And we
Yeah.
want to make sure that she is pretty horrifying.
Yes.
I mean, you know, the actress that we've got so far is amazing, but she needs horrifying up.
Yeah.
So it's like we want to make her, you know, really, really disgusting and gross and scary, and you know, we want to make sure that when people go away, that they're looking around the corner. You know, they're checking over their shoulder to make sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that
You don't want like, I mean, I know people find clowns scary, but you don't want basically party clown just coming around the corner, something that looks really overly like friendly coming
mm,
around trying to scare you. It just wouldn't look right, would it? It would look, you know, I feel like, you know, when you get those independent films that are done on a very cheap budget, but they're done in a to look, I say bad, so look cheap deliberately. It's
mm,
fine, but when you're looking at the material that you've got, and especially the ambition that you're going for, you don't really want to be going for that sort of low end budget side, because sometimes low budget can be a benefit. But
mhm,
I mean, to be honest, actually, I say low budget can be a benefit. Realistically, for context, for anyone who's listening who wants to get into film production or is interested in this side of things, and Jack will probably explain this as well to you as well. To be honest, £1,000 is generally for a film of Black Barrel's size is quite small, to be honest, isn't it? Really, like
mhm,
compared to like the likes of your big Marvel studios,
mhm.
even like a rom com from like Universal Studios or something has a bigger budget than Black Barrel's does. Like,
Oh yeah.
you know, Black Barrel's budget is quite, you know, it might seem a lot, but realistically, compared to some of the big studio names, as Jack has explained already, that you know the difference between independent and the bigger stuff, you know, it's quite small. So
Mm,
whilst yes, it is a lot, it's a lot for what it is in a way, because you know it's you're using, and you can quote me if I'm wrong, but correct me if I'm wrong, but basically it's using a smaller amount of money, but it's a lot for like a very contained. And again, I feel like going back to what we said about Riverboat being a very contained like story, very contained space. Even though you're going bigger and better with this feature film, which you 100% are, and I'm very excited. You know, I really do hope that it gets off the ground and it goes forward, because it genuinely looks very exciting. It's still got that nice, contained, very
mm,
slimlined aspect to it, should we say, in the way I would say slimline, not in the sense that, oh, it's very basic, it's very boring, you know, because I would say it's very, you're taking very simple elements, but you're
mm,
going to hopefully, with the budget that would help, heighten them to that
mhm,
production quality, that high end production quality that we expect from the
mhm,
likes of, say, The Lighthouse or even the Nosferatu film that's coming out later this year.
mm,
It's one of those things, isn't it, where you got, even though it's a big budget from an independent film perspective, it's a small budget compared to some of the bigger films. And ultimately, you know, without these kind of films, you don't get the big films. So
mm.
that's the importance of
Yeah,
independent film. Anything you
mm.
want to add to that, or just sort of
No,
expand on?
no, that's absolutely it. And that's something that me and my producer Alice Ryan have been talking about. Is it's always you know, with these you know, first feature films and with these indie films, it's always about um, like containing it, because
Yeah,
it's so easy in a sense to write the film with the spaceships and the you know, the planets and all that sort of stuff, because you have no budget. Whereas when you know, you write the script and then you go, right, okay, how are we actually going to do this? You are forced to trim everything down, make sure that there's no fat on it at all. And that's, you know, that's obviously what we want. So it forces you to make sure that, okay, yeah, every scene has to have purposes. Every moment has to be worth it on lots of different levels. Because if it isn't, then it's, you know, it's money. It's not money down the drain, but it's like it's making sure that every pound, and or you know, if you're in America, every dollar is spent on something that's really, that's, you're getting the most bang for your buck. Um,
yeah.
so yeah, it's amazing fun though. It's brilliant.
Oh, that's brilliant. Going back to, sorry, but we went on a weird tangent then. Basically, like independent film rules. Let's do this. But I think I'd like to just take us back just a little bit
Mhm.
to, so tell us about, have you got any actors in place at the moment currently? Have you got any people cast yet?
Yeah, so we have two of our main roles. We have Jackie, who is going to be playing the witch. I don't want to give away the alternate name, although I might have done that in the social media. We'll see. Because it's based off a local legend and stuff. So she was one of the first people that we approached. Back in maybe October time. So sort of quite a few months ago. And yeah, she's already done some promo for us. She's been in the Greenlit campaign and stuff. And then we also have Sam Anderson, who is going to be playing the role of Kate, which obviously doesn't mean a lot to maybe your audience now. No. But she is playing... It's interesting, actually. We were talking about this, that without giving... it's sort of, how much do I give away? Not a lot.
I mean, it's very tempting to give a lot away, but I feel like we got to keep a little bit of suspense for them, haven't we? In the long run, be like, give us the money, and you'll slowly discover more and more.
all I'll say is that the character of Kate and the character of the witch are somewhat mirrors of each other. This character of Kate is very much interested in spirituality, sort of not non-traditional religion. She's very interested in crystals and tarot card readings and all of that sort of stuff. And so she is sort of exactly playing opposite this witch character, who is obviously a very old-fashioned way of looking at alternate spirituality. Whereas in the past it would be called witchcraft, now it might be called just generic spirituality. People wear crystals and they do these tarot card readings and stuff. And while some people don't understand it or don't really like it, it's largely accepted. People don't really. It's sort of more alternative rather than shunned. So yeah, we've sort of got those two characters that are, as I said, sort of mirrors of each other. But that's all I want to say about that.
That's fair enough. No, there's director's prerogative. You're keeping that nice and tight under your hat there, which we will be thankful for in the long run when we do hopefully see the film in its finished glory. Because I don't think anybody would thank me for being the source of spoiler bait at the beginning of the filmmaking process before it's even got to the end. So no, I'm very glad that you've shared a little bit of insight about the characters. So lots to look forward to with that. Who are you working with in terms of behind the scenes? You have briefly mentioned, obviously we've touched on producing and like budgetary stuff as well for anyone who's interested in that kind of thing. Talk us through the people that you're collaborating with, because in your campaign that you put out on Greenlit, you have gone through, I think there's a dedicated video to your producer and other working partnerships as well. Can you just talk us through a couple of people that you are, any of the people really that you're working with on this project? Any familiar collaborators that people who know you would know you for, or just anyone in general that's worth noting to keep an eye out for?
Well, yeah, I mean that's sort of the stage we're at. Obviously, I'm working with Alice, who I've been working with for. We haven't officially collaborated on anything, but it feels like we have, because we've been talking about this project for probably since June last year. So yeah, it's been lots of talks, lots of meetings. She runs and has founded a company called Art Pictures. We're working with that. It's very big in the Essex area. We're working with the Essex Film Collective, which again, any filmmaker in Essex, I dare say, should know about that, and should be a part of that. It's £5 a month. It's brilliant. We're working very closely with them, but we have literally just put out our open call. We want to see lots of the filmmaking talent in the area, because what we realize, with the Essex Film Collective is there is so much talent here, and one of the whole points of the film is about using the talent from the area to make a film that could not be made anywhere else. It'd be very easy to reach out to the thousands of directors of photography that are living in London or around the country, but it's like we want to support local filmmakers in the area. So we're putting out that open call. We're currently in the reviewing process. We have got lots and lots of emails to go through, which is absolutely brilliant. It's better than the alternative, which is having none. So yeah, that's sort of what we're doing at the moment. But I'm working with a co-writer Christopher Roberts, he's absolutely brilliant. He's really helped me whip the script into shape. But yeah, we're looking for reviewing all of that. We're hoping to get a lot of that done by the end of March type thing, and then we're going to be putting out our casting calls and stuff, which is very exciting.
Oh, exciting stuff. That honestly, even though, as of the recording of this, and if anyone's watching this back or listening back to this as like a archival thing, you heard everything here first. This is the beginning of the legacy that is Black Barrels, the feature film. Very random point to ask, which isn't really the first question that most people would ask, but do we have a current estimated runtime for Black Barrels, or is it still? I know you said that the script has still been sort of like there's a few things that have been whipped into shape here and there. It might still be in flux as well, but do we have a current runtime of roughly how much of an epic this feature film is going to be?
Alice is trying to get me back down to 90 to 100 minutes, so that's obviously just over an hour and a half. But the more
I'm guessing your original idea was something like 3 hours.
It actually wasn't, and this is sort of maybe a good point to mention is that for first features, I think it can be. I say this like you only do one first feature, but like new features, it can be very tempting to think I'm gonna do my Ben-Hur or my Lawrence of Arabia or whatever as my first. I want to be I want to do Citizen Kane or something as my first feature, and it's like because I want that legacy, and it's like it's going well. It's understanding the scope of it, and so we purposefully did try and keep it, always aiming for the 90-minute mark. Keep it short, keep it sharp, and keep it very sort of slimlined, because it's that idea of thinking ahead and going, okay, if we can do a great 90 minutes, then someone might trust you to go and do a good 2 hours and then a good 3 hours or whatever. It's the whole thing of, young filmmakers who are, making a short film or something, but they're going, well, I actually want to get into features and stuff, but that's why you make short films, because if you can't tell a story, if you can't hold an audience for 10 minutes, then how the hell do you think you're going to hold an audience for 90 minutes?
Exactly.
And it's that proof that you can tell a story in a short period of time, so then people go, okay, well, chances are you can probably tell a story for longer periods of time. But it's the irony of it sometimes is that a short film can sometimes be trickier to write because you've got 10 pages, or if you're lucky, you might have 20 pages.
It's like trying to condense, it's like we were taught. I briefly sort of over-explained your original, our original meeting, shall we say, Riverboat, and it's quite, because how long? That's not a very long film at all, really. That's that's 10 minutes, isn't it, or just around that mark, isn't it?
It's quite long for a short film. That's probably 20-25 in between.
That's it. Yeah. I couldn't remember because I feel like. It doesn't, and this is more of a compliment to you, really. It doesn't. When I watched it, because you very graciously showed me an early preview version of it, so I could basically get an insight into it, and I watched it, and I was just like, yeah, this is really good. It didn't drag, so it felt like it went by quicker than it actually did. But that's because that was more of and that's very much a credit to you, obviously. Everybody involved, the actors especially, because it was such a contained story. And as you say, it's very much short filmmaking is a tricky skill. And for anyone who's listening who wants to get into filmmaking, be this right here, right now, somewhere in the future, if we're dead and gone and you're listening to this and you're listening to us say, oh, maybe you should try filmmaking. Like Jack says, try a short film first. And if you feel like you can sustain yourself a good solid 10 minutes, even 5 minutes. 5 minutes is trickier, to be fair, because you've got to fit. If you're trying to fit a lot into a short space of time, that's a lot. But 10 minutes is generally a nice standard for short filmmaking, as most of us in the film community and anyone who loves film will know. Generally, 10 minutes is your sort of golden standard for a short film, really. Although technically, if you want to be precise with it, technically, I think, isn't it like 66 minutes is technically considered feature film or something along the lines of that, if I remember correctly. And anything after that is like feature status, basically.
Yeah, it varies. There's this grey area between about 45 minutes to sort of, an hour and 10 that is like, it is technically a feature film, but it's it's still quite short. I mean, if you went to the cinema to see a 55-minute film, I mean, you would feel sort of cheated a little bit. You want, and especially as films nowadays are getting longer, I mean, it's sort of quite, certainly I feel like it is, it's quite rare to get a really short, sharp 90 minutes. Nowadays you're sort of looking at 2 hours plus, really. So it's, but there is this grey area between, for me it's 45 minutes to an hour and 10-ish, which is 60, 70 minutes.
Oh, brilliant. So, that's cool. Well, all I can say is I'm very excited to see Black Barrels. Is there anything you want to share with us about Black Barrels itself, like the inspiration or anything you haven't covered already that you just want to let people know about, why they should invest in the project? If that, so as this goes out, you'll still be raising your funds. If people are listening back to this in the future, hopefully we made it, and you should be able to follow the following link to the description to the film. But other than that, is there anything you want to do, or say, should I say, to everybody who's listening or watching, why they should invest their time and, most importantly, their money in Black Barrels, the feature film?
So there's sort of two avenues, I guess. There's obviously the crowdfunding. And that is, it's a very simple, going on and pledging any amount that you'd like. Those type of things, you will get things like, you might get rewards, so you might get the credit in the film, and you might get, there are also some little like merchandise, some signed things, and some exclusive access things that are very exciting. And that's sort of one avenue. And obviously that directly goes into our hair and makeup. So it's sort of, the more that we raise for that, the better that the witch is going to look. So, we didn't want the crowdfunding to go towards wages, because people, you don't see that. That's money in someone else's pocket. But we wanted to raise, with our crowdfunding, things that some people can actually see on screen. So that's sort of that's our goal with the crowdfunding is, and however generous people are, that's, going to make the creatures look even better. And then, for people who maybe are looking at this and going, I want to get involved a bit more seriously, it's a case of, feeling free to reach out to us. We can put this on the screen, but if feel free to email us at moviepicturebox@gmail.com, or send us a message on our social medias. We're Black Barrels Film on Instagram and Facebook page and stuff. Feel free to send us a message. Because if you are maybe a bit more serious about investing in the film, a little bit extra, and you'd like to sort of become an actual investor with a chance of getting some money back, then we are very happy to talk about that as well. Because that's sort of, as to link it back with what we were talking about earlier, that's another avenue where we're just starting to approach our big investors who are going to be, we hope, giving, sort of the big 60% of the budget chunk, and those people, that is that's how you get the film made. That's making sure that people are paid well and make sure that we've got all the production elements sorted. So that's sort of where we're going with that. So if people are interested, again, feel free to reach out. DMs are always open, emails are always open. We check them very regularly. And again, that email was moviepicturebox.com. No, moviepicturebox@gmail.com.
Moviepicturebox@gmail.com. That's the one you got to email there, guys. Please send all your lovely suggestions, any help or anything like that to Jack. Anything else will be promptly sent to the junk folder.
Potentially, it depends. We'll see.
Oh god, no, but honestly, it's brilliant, literally, just to listen to you. I know I go on a lot as well because I could talk for England, as people have probably told me many times in my life, but listening to you talk about, like, all you're asking for is something to make the production look good, and anyone who's listening or watching, that is all we really want as creatives who are in the filmmaking or the television production side of, content and stuff that you see every day on Netflix, Disney, Amazon Prime, all those kind of things, YouTube as well, all these things that we make. we make so that people can enjoy them and that people can have that little bit of escapism, a little bit of voyeuristic enjoyment, and just something to talk about, really, and just to pass the time and do many other things in between. So even the smallest bit of contribution will always help. And I've always been a great advocate for people that I know, including Jack and other people that I've had on the podcast and of recent times, where I literally tell you, I mean, people, if everybody actually listened to me and said, oh, go and donate or go and help with this now, they're either going to be very, very nice, rich people, or they're going to be very broke. Either way, they are, as long as you're contributing in some way, it doesn't even have to be monetary sometimes sharing, and especially in the age of digital technology, social media and stuff, and the reason why podcasting took to a big momentum as we were in the pandemic and such, and that sense of connection on this multimedia platform that is cyberspace and everything like that, and the way we're going forward and such, it's a way of connecting people, not just socially, but also to help move things forward, and just in general making things that you enjoy that little bit better, and also creating a community as well. My audience base isn't the biggest, but at the same time, Jack's is up and rising as it stands at this recording, but in several years' time, it could be really big, and this could have been the beginning of it, all because you shared this podcast or you listened to it with a friend, and even just sharing out the campaign, the Greenlit campaign for Jack's film, will help it go a long way. It literally does. You may think, oh, me tweeting it or Xing it, whatever we want to call it these days, or sharing it on your Facebook or sending it via a message in your social media, and you may think, oh, that's not going to help very much. I'm not actually donating something to make it happen. Well, to be honest, you might not be, but someone that sees your post just on the off chance might be some rich millionaire that is willing to give everything to Jack right now for his film, or they might just have 50 quid that they have spare that they want to give him. It's, or even £5, anything helps. That is my biggest sort of plea to everybody who's listening to this, is just invest in independent film, be it monetary or socially. In some way, invest in independent film, because one day these are going to be the guys that are going to be making the films that your kids, your grandkids, yourself, you're all going to be watching in the future on the big screen. And it's all going to start here. And if we don't give them a start here, we're not going to get anywhere. And we'll just end up with really mindless, boring films that no one wants to see. And they're just rehashes of stuff that we've seen before, without any sort of independent twist or individual identity. So that's my little piece there. Basically,
No,
Jack, do you have anything to add to that?
I think that's really important, and obviously I'm biased because I'm in this journey. But independent films, that's how filmmakers, as you said, that's how they get their start, and this is how so many filmmakers that, as you said, we will now go to the cinema and we will queue up around the block for, and that are making headlines and stuff, and the really interesting new films. They all, so many of them started from an independent filmmaking thing. And now that, we're getting into this digital age where filmmakers are doing this, films are now being crowdfunded. Films that have now gone on to be very famous. I mean, the example that I can think of is The Babadook. I really hope that is the film I'm thinking of, where that famously raised a good chunk of its budget through crowdfunding, and then a studio saw how much, or a very independent film studio, a film investor, saw how much it was and sort of matched that, or invested in just that little bit extra to get the film into what it is now. And am I right in thinking William Friedkin of The Exorcist, who directed The Exorcist, said The Babadook was one of the scariest films of the 21st century. I really hope that I'm getting that right, but I think the gist of it is right.
It sounds about right, so I'm pretty sure you're on the right line. But yeah, no, I do agree. Yeah,
it's like this is how young filmmakers or filmmakers who are young in their journey are starting off, and yeah, it's an exciting space, and and to make genre films on an independent stage, because so many independent films are dramas. So it's that's what I like about independent films that are done in a certain genre, horror or whatever it is, because it gives people what they know, but it means that you haven't got the pressure of a studio. There isn't necessarily that it's a good pressure to have, but the pressure of making money. You can just make it be, you can make it the best film that you possibly can without having to worry. Oh, we need to make sure that we're going to make our money back. So we don't want to include experimental things or whatever it is. So yeah, it's really important, and yeah, people who like watching films, who like making films. It's so important that we all support each other. So it's really brilliant.
Exactly. And the example that I can think of as well of recent times, not necessarily because it's a good film, shall we say, but the recent, at least in the last year, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, which has drawn quite an acclaim from audiences, not because it's the best film in the world, but because it is very outrageously gory and just it takes the source material to a completely other plane of existence, a different level altogether. And that basically is sort of your best example of it's not the best film, and it was fairly independent to my knowledge as it stands. But it got wide distribution online. It even got a DVD and Blu-ray release, if I remember correctly, as well. And there's even talks of them doing a sequel or a follow-up of some kind within the same universe, then, of a different classic children's source material, and making it horrified. But it's just that is an example as well of recent times as well. It doesn't have to be the best film in the world, but sometimes it'll get you that start. And I mean, maybe hopefully the people behind Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey actually make something that's a little bit more tasteful, shall we say? But that's just my personal opinion.
Here's a bit of trivia for you. I know the director who did Blood and Honey.
Oh, did you?
I went on every, get the dates right, every August in Essex there is a program called the Young Film Academy, and what that does is that takes probably hundreds, it might be, but quite a lot of young people aged 14 to 17, something like that, and over the space of 2 weeks they make a film. And I got hired to come in sort of for the last few days and help them with the edit, because obviously we haven't talked about it too much, but I am sort of an editor first and foremost. That's my day job. I'm a freelance video editor. I work for clients, that sort of thing. So I've got editing experience. So I come in and I help the team with editing these short films. And Dan Allen is one of the people on there, and he is the director of Blood and Honey. So, and he was talking about it all the time, and it's one of those weird connections that you shouldn't. And then you see it, and you see him talking. You see him talking about it, and then you see the trailers and stuff, and you're like, oh. And that's that's what independent film is, and I guess it proves the point that in film, everyone knows everyone, and is sort of who you know.
It's like the 3 degrees of separation, isn't it, kind of thing? There's always someone that knows someone through something.
And sometimes you don't even realize that, the people who you're sat across the table from, certainly at this Young Film Academy, we're sat across the table having breakfast with each other, and then you don't realize that he's going on to direct this, and so is going on to direct this, and everyone's making this, and it's amazing. And that's the thing. Sometimes it's not even about. Again, I haven't seen Blood and Honey, but it's
a very interesting film. I will say this now.
I think conceptually, I'm really interested in it, and obviously it's a big topic, and probably one that we don't want to get into today, because otherwise this podcast will be 3 hours long.
Oh god, it'd be so long. Yes,
this whole thing of characters coming into the public domain and stuff, and how people are new interpretations of those stories. So it's, so in that sense, I'm really interested in it.
Yes, and bringing it back full circle to the public domain and just influences and independence and your filmmaking that you're embarking on as we speak now. Is there any last words you would like to give regarding Black Barrels, as to why, if you were to sum Black Barrels up very briefly, would you say elevator pitch. Should we do this alien style then? Would you do your elevator pitch for the listeners and for the viewers, and just say, why should people invest, be it socially or monetary, into this project? And why should they care about it at the end of the day? Obviously I care about it because it's what I live for. I love like filmmaking in any sort of form, and that's just because that's my personal bias. I understand, and same with you as well, because it's your film. But for anyone who's just listening to this on a whim, why should we invest in Black Barrels? Give us like a briefing of like an elevator pitch of sorts of why we should be interested. And just you've explained what we can expect. It's very witchy, it's very creepy, it's got some Robert Eggers style sort of influences here and there, but why should they sign on? And finally, once you've sort of given that, tell us just where to find you. So all your social medias and obviously the Greenlit page, which is very important for the fund as well.
So I guess one of the interesting things that we found out when we were doing our research was when you look up witch film or witch stories, 90% of them are all about Salem. Whether it be because they're the most iconic with their sort of visually iconic or whatever it is. And yet Salem had sort of less than, I think, 50 women who were tried and executed. Essex had hundreds. The story of witches in film and media is dominated by Salem. This film presents a new angle of it. Presents English witch trials, and specifically, obviously, Essex witch trials. So, which were 10 times, 100 times more prolific and just as brutal as the Salem trials. So this looks to present a new angle and offers also a more, I think, hopefully a more sophisticated look at what witches are, what they represent, what they... how witches are a reflection of the society of the time and that mob mentality as well, and how dangerous that can be. So that's the thing with Black Barrels, is it's presenting a new look of the witch mythology, and hopefully it will also scare the pants off you as well.
Yes.
Because certainly, that's what I did going in. Is I didn't go in writing it to scare other people. I wrote it what scares me. And so, because I think that's all you can write about. So I wrote a script that, even when I'm reading it, and sometimes when I'm working on it late at night, I have to put happy music on, rather than my sad, sinister music, because otherwise I get too freaked out. And that's what we're also doing with the film, is just to present a really classic ghost story. Something that is scary, that's going to stick with you, something that is going to horrify you and maybe in some places gross you out, but not in a gratuitous way. So where you can find us, we are Black Barrels Film, Instagram and Facebook. You can follow me personally on things like Twitter and TikTok at the Jack PC, Instagram as well. And the Greenlit page is greenlit.com/projects/Black Barrels. And you'll be able to find it. Links are everywhere in our social medias, so you don't have to remember the URLs. But it'd be amazing if people, as you said earlier, even if it's £10, even if it's £50, even if it's sending us an email saying, I know this location that you might want to use, or there's a makeup artist that would be really interested, or pitching yourself forward. If listeners are listening or watching to this and they're going, I'd really like to get involved with that. I want to be on set. I want to help out with this. Send us an email. We're always open. And even if you're not from the Essex area, there still might be something that we can help you with, and that you can help us with, and that we can find a space for you. Because while we're going to prioritize Essex talent, we understand that there are amazing people all over the country. So we're not going to instantly reject anyone just because they're outside of Essex. And speaking as an outsider of Essex myself, I mean, I only moved here a couple of years ago, so the borders aren't so strict.
No, excellent. That's brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Jack. So, like the man says, if you are interested, or you know someone who might be interested, or you want to help in some way, follow those links. They'll be all posted all over Take 97's social medias, all over Jack's, the official Black Barrels film Instagram and Facebook pages, the lot. Just keep on top of those and just follow the journey, really. That's all I can say. The last thing that I want to do before we cap this episode off, this lovely episode, which I think we've timed pretty much to perfection, really, almost, as a standard interview goes. I would just like to, because we've talked about horror films, we touched on a couple already. Would you like to talk us through or tell us, I don't know whether you've prepared anything, you probably haven't, probably sprung this on you at the last minute. Do you have any, in your head anyway, films, like big main horror films, not that have inspired Black Barrel so much, but just do you have like a top 3 or a top 5 like list of films that you like in the horror genre that are your go-to, or just any, even if it's just one film really, is there any particular titles in the horror genre that stand out to you as that's what horror cinema is and I would love to emulate that kind of thing?
Yeah, so the first one that springs to mind is The Babadook. It's an independent horror film that just it freaks me out. It's, you know, genuinely scary as well. It's not just a jump scare film. It's creepy. It's unnerving, and yet it does deliver on those like classic scares as well. And I like that it's a horror film not made in Hollywood. You know, it's a horror film from, I hope I'm getting right, it's Australia. I think it's Australia or New Zealand. And I liked that it presented that new angle. I have I dare say a personal connection, but that might be exaggerating a little bit. The Conjuring is a film that still to this day I think is one of the scariest films ever made. Because it was one of the first sort of modern horror films that I saw. And I remember there are still moments from that freak me out. And obviously the main character in The Conjuring is a witch, and so there's that element of like how that Bathsheba character is presented. That really was a big inspiration, or is a big inspiration for Black Barrels. And, you know, that film also has a personal connection with me, I guess, because I was in America very recently and we went to the Conjuring house. We were in Rhode Island, which is where it is, and we went over to the location that it is based on. And that's really amazing. And that was an absolutely amazing time, and to learn about what the film got right, what the film, you know, ignored or chose to ignore. But that was a film that still, you know, just scares me. You know, I watch it, but I also watch it and have a good time. You know, it's one of those, it was the first film that I realized I can be scared and have a good time. And then, I guess just to make it a nice even 3, a film that scares me that I never want to watch again is Sinister. I know that these are like those, you know, The Conjuring and Sinister are sort of popcorn horror films, and, you know, but they're still, you know, I remember I watched Sinister at uni, and there was, you know, we watched it in our tiny little uni accommodation room. There was like 10 of us in this tiny bedroom, all watching this film, and it then became a straw pulling exercise as to who had to walk home that night, because we were all so freaked out. And when I was at uni, you had to walk through a little forested area to get back to the other accommodation. And after that film, man, I was glad that I pulled the long straw in that sense, and I did not have to walk home. It's a film that still, I watch clips of it online and I go, you know what, that's enough. I don't want to watch that anymore. The Conjuring, Sinister, and The Babadook are, just 3 films that scare me. They
you can't put it any other way. It absolutely terrifying. So you've heard it here first, guys. If you want to scare Jack Burney, our lovely guest here, put one of those films on, particularly Sinister, and make him walk home all by himself through a forested area. But I would be
able to friend after that one.
No. Oh, bless. No, but the Yeah, they're really good choices there. To be fair, none of which I would personally pick because I'm a little bit more. I don't know, sort of. I enjoy. So I love the Lighthouse. The Lighthouse is great. But in terms of if I was to mirror you and do a top three, I would say, and there are different degrees of horror, and I've sort of changed over the years about what I like in a horror film, what I don't. Um, it's like I like good popcorn cinema, like and I love stuff like I've enjoyed recently. I actually only in the past year got into the Conjuring series, so
Mm-hmm.
like the likes of the Nun and all the Conjuring universe stuff. I really do enjoy those because I like the vintage settings. So through the from the 50s through to the 70s. And all the different time periods. I do like the fact that we're looking at it's a modern horror film or set of films, but they're set in a period and it's got that nice eerie quality to it that you don't quite get with some of the films that are set in the modern day. Like
Mm-hmm.
even something that's set in the 90s or even the early 2000s, I think would have that sort of grip. But whereas if something's set in like present day, like the 2020s or even the 2010s, it doesn't for me sort of give me that same pull factor of like a horror film and what I think is a horror film. Obviously, if I was to go with your sort of three three film model, I would say, and I'm not going to do them in any order because I can't really put them in any order, but I do love. I have a great respect for Dracula, the 1931 film Dracula, the original Bela Lugosi film from Universal Studios, one of the original monster movies. It's not particularly the most scariest of films. It's basically become more popcorn cinema now than it would have been compared to in the day when it first came out, when it was probably absolutely terrifying. But I just love the cinematography, the way that it's lit, the way that the smoke just eeps out of the set. That classic scene where you see Dracula come down the stairs for the first time, the grand staircase, and he greets his guest. And it's just, the atmosphere for Dracula is honestly one of my favorite classic monster movie atmosphere films. And it's very much of the time, but I just love the vintageness of it and also just the way those skills were implored into it make it a quintessential classic treat for anyone who loves cinema and horror films. The next one that I do love as well, it's a bit more of a cheesy example, but I love Nightmare on Elm Street, but not the first one as much as I love it, but the 1987 sequel, Nightmare on Elm Street 3 or Nightmare on Elm Street Dream Warriors, because I've always said this to the cows come home, that literally it is the second film. Whilst the second film does what it does, it basically is the actual sequel to the first one that we all should have had in the first place. And I just think some of the crazy, weird, wacky dream scenarios that you get Robert Englund's Freddy Krueger in, they're just absolutely freaky. They're but they're in a cheesy way as well. Like the practical effects that were implored into that film, they were just, I don't know. There's something about them so campy but so fun at the same time that I'm not quite scared, but I'm creeped out, but not in the sense that I want to run away to like hide in a corner somewhere. So that's the sort of like crazy side of horror that I like. But then the next one, which is an absolute classic, and I can't leave it off of this list really, is the 1980 Kubrick film The Shining. I literally love that film to pieces. Ever since I first saw it, just everything from the camera work, the acting, even Shelley Duvall, who most people have grown to loathe over the years or love, depending on which point of view you want to look at it, because of the behind the scenes stories and her relationship with Kubrick on set and the way that he pushed her to get that performance out of her, be it through very mean means or just very sort of skillful direction. It's up for debate. But I just genuinely think The Shining is one of my absolute favorite films of all time in terms of horror. And it's them damn girls, the damn girls at the end of the corridor that they just freak me out every time. But it's truly the masterpiece of horror cinema, in my honest, humble opinion. But obviously, there's many to choose from depending on what your creed or crude is. To be honest,
I was going to say The Shining is weirdly, maybe this is how much of a freak I am. Like I will put The Shining on like a Sunday afternoon and just watch it almost for comfort. Like it, it's almost just like yeah, I can I absolutely adore The Shining. It's like admittedly, it didn't scare me in that sense, but it was it was still it's just one of those films that it's like, yeah, but I still, yeah, I absolutely love it. And I think that's the thing, for me, like, my horror picks were, it's films that scared me, but yet there are horror films, like I will watch Dracula and, just marvel at it, because of the time period. So, but it's in my head, I almost don't class it as a horror film because I'm like, I get scared during it, but yeah, I still respect it so much as a horror film, just as a film in general. So yeah, it's Admittedly, I haven't seen the Nightmare on Elm Street 3, but
it's
maybe
a bizarre adventure. I will say this now. If you watch the first one, I would say skip the. If you want the homoerotic side of things from Freddy Krueger, watch the second one. That's fine. It's like an adventure with Freddy Krueger on a side street, sidestep. But watch the first one and then watch the third one directly after because they do link up really nicely. I'm not saying that to undermine the second one because the second one of recent times through the LGBTQ plus community has actually gained a lot of like a great cult following. I mean, it got a cult following at the time as well, but even more as the years go on and the more conversations we have, the more honest conversations we have, and more like open diversity that we are trying to encourage in our films and such, it's gained much more of a popular following than it may have initially got, especially from a critical standpoint. And what it says about that side of like, personality and being human and growing up as a teenager and stuff, and thoughts and feelings and emotions all in this weird wacky horror film. It's quite a good film in that respect. But number 3 for me as a horror film in terms of practical effects and just crazy bizarre notions of like demons and like this man with his hat and his claw, literally just, the third one is as a sequel, because not many horror sequels do hit that mark. The Conjuring is different because it's like one big long interwoven story, but I think with Nightmare on Elm Street as like it's a continuation of the first film, but it takes it to that next step. It's like Freddy's coming to get you, and it's definitely the next step up. It's like what they've tried to do with Michael Myers in the Halloween films recently, where they try and make him even better. But the problem is that for a fact that Freddy can ultimately be defeated, whereas Michael Myers apparently cannot until the very last minute. But who knows?
No, it's to be fair, Halloween. I think I've only ever seen the first one.
I think that's all you need to see, to be honest with you. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, a lot of people said that. They were like, yeah, you don't need to bother. But like, I still remember going, because we went to go and see it in the cinema, and it was so, I respect that film so much because considering it was a modern audience when we went to see it a couple of years ago, modern audience, and towards that end sequence where he's in the house with her, and you think he's dead and he's not, and all that kind of stuff. The fact that made modern audiences actually scream, like I think it was when he either sits up or it's revealed he's standing, or can't remember the exact details, but I remember it's it's a jump scare in it, and it actually made I think 2 or 3 women in the audience actually scream in fear, and I was like, I've got to respect that. However many decades after it was made. I was that's a scary
power of William Shatner. That's all I can say. The power of William Shatner. For anyone who doesn't know, that is a reference to the fact that the mask of Michael Myers is a William Shatner mask, just with everything stripped off of it. But yeah, which is I still find bizarre to this day. But anyway, so we'll wrap up on that. So Jack, it has been a pleasure having you on this episode of Take 97, a film podcast. This lovely almost feature length. We're not quite 66 minutes yet, but we are pretty much feature length almost interview episode. And yeah, like I said, anyone who wants to get involved with Black Barrels, please do go check it out. Check out Jack's social media. We'll link it on all the posts that we put out as well. We'll be sharing pictures. I think I did share it on my story not long ago on the Take 97 Instagram. the link and a couple of videos and stuff to do with the campaign. If I haven't, then I definitely will be now. And if it's in the past that you're listening, like in the future you're listening to this, let's just hope you've got a film to watch, because quite frankly, if you weren't excited by this appetizer, you definitely will be excited by the time it comes out. So I'm very pleased to have you on the podcast again, Jack. Any last words before we leave?
Thank you very much for having me back. It's been fun to talk horror films, and hopefully, we can do this again as the project progresses, and it can be a bit of an update every so often about
of course,
what's going on. After we've maybe once we've done production, or once the film's ready to launch, it'll be fun, and had a good time. It's been fun.
Absolutely. Well, that's a wrap on Take 97, a film podcast, the Black Barrels feature film Jack Burney interview edition of the show, with me, your host, David Ingram, and
me, Jack Burney. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And we will see you hopefully again soon. I will see you again soon. Jack will definitely probably see you at some point as well. But for now, guys, see you later. Bye-bye.